This message is for YouTube and YouTube bots. YouTube, this is educational content. It is a true crime case. We are reviewing a criminal indictment. Please note that this is educational content and we provide commentary to further break this down. Let's go.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes.
The Suzanne Morphew case is such an interesting case, right? It is not your clear cut woman goes missing and, the husband gets accused of doing something to his wife. There's so many twists and turns to the Suzanne Morphew case. Out of Colorado, Suzanne Morphew on Mother's Day rides her bike and then goes missing. The only thing that is found is her bike. Now, her husband, who she'd been with for quite some time, they were having some marital problems, right? Typically, what happens? Well, when stuff like that happens, when people go missing, they look at the husband. That's the person of interest. But she goes missing for many years. And I think it's maybe even relevant to note that she went missing during a very significant period of time in this country, which was C-19 time, where people were going missing and they really weren't looking for you because we were worried about this, virus situation and the stuff going around. As of recent, Barry Morphew has been charged, and I'm a little surprised by it because a lot of us thought that this case was done and dead and cold. No more to it. In order to get into the Barry Morphew case and the charging doc, I did a timeline, I want to say in 2023, where I timeline all of the events in 2023. I think it's relevant to play it now because so much has happened from that time. Let me know what you guys think in the comments as you're watching this. And we're going to get right into the charging document. Let's go.
So on May 10th, 2020, a Chaffee County wife and mother disappears. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office received a report at 5:46 p.m. of a missing woman in the area of County Road 225 and West Highway 50. The reporting party, a neighbor, said 49-year-old Suzanne Morphew had gone for a bike ride and failed to return home. A search immediately began. On May 11, 2020, the Sheriff's Office sends out a press release on social media alerting the community of the missing woman. Search and rescue, the Chaffee County TAC team, and search parties with the dogs from the Colorado Department of Corrections joined the search. In all, over 100 people were used during the search on May 11th of 2020. On May 15th, 2020, the FBI joins the search. The FBI and CBI launched a comprehensive search of the area, bringing more than 50 searchers and investigators to comb the area for additional clues. Investigators announced personal items of Morphew were found west of Mayville. On May 17, 2020, there was a plea from her husband, Barry Morphew.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
Barry Morphew and a friend are offering a reward of $200,000.
Barry Morphew released a video. In the video, he's heard saying how much he loves his wife and that he'll do whatever it takes to get her back. On May 22nd of 2020, there was a search of the property. Investigators conducted 3-day search at a residential property on the east side of Salida. However, this search turns up no information. On June 10th, 2020, 1 month after her disappearance, the Sheriff's Office planned a community canvass in the county to contact residents and others to not only share information, but also to obtain any new information on her case. August 10th of 2020, 3 months after Morphew went missing, the CBI and the Sheriff's Office distributed missing person flyers. There were no changes in the case at this time. A dedicated hotline had been created in the weeks leading up to this. Suzanne Morphew's brother, Andrew, announced plans to organize an independent search in the area where she disappeared.
And looked, and I realized that nobody rode over the side of that hill. There would have been signs of a struggle, or you would have been skinned up. The bike would have been mangled if you'd have gone down that hill like that. When you find a bicycle at the bottom of a ravine that you're almost certain nobody rode over there, and an animal did not attack her because there absolutely was no blood evidence sent from an animal, it leads me to believe a human being's involved with this. And now it's just a matter of finding her and then letting the authorities sort out the who, why. Please, Barry, if you could see this, I would really love it if you would take the time to revisit the authorities and go over everything once again. Take a voice analysis and a lie detector and clear yourself. Put my mind at ease and everybody out there's mind at ease. If you want to shut the rumors down, that's the way you do it. You need to find your wife. That should be your only goal, is to find your wife. And whatever you're asked to do by the authorities is what you should do. If you're not guilty, step up to the plate.
And this was August 31st of 2020. September 23rd, 2020, brother starts 6-day search. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office said her brother Andrew will be leading an independent search in the area. In the area, his sister went missing. He also launched a webpage dedicated to her search. September 29th, 2020, searches continued to bring no answers. The sheriff's office said 3 locations where trained dogs alerted investigators of human remains. However, the locations were excavated and nothing of evidentiary value to the Suzanne Morphew case was located. And by now, November 10th of 2020, we are 6 months into the search and no answers. After 6 months, investigators called on her friends and families who might have spoken to her on social media to share any information. On April 30th of 2021, which would have been her 50th birthday, in honor of her memory and birthday, a bench dedication and balloon release happened at the Poncha Springs Visitor Center in Salida. And then May 5th of 2021, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office announced Morphew's husband, Barry, was taken into custody at 9:15 a.m. He was arrested on murder in the first degree, tampering with physical evidence, and attempt to influence a public servant in connection to the alleged murder of his wife. On May 7, 2021, sister of Suzanne Morphew talked suspicion, forgiveness, justice after Barry Morphew's arrest. Good Morning America spoke with Morphew's sister to discuss her brother-in-law's arrest. My reaction to my brother-in-law's arrest was one of grief and great sadness, Melinda told GMA. Justice is a process, and it just started. On May 14th, 2021, Barry Morphew accused of using missing wife's ballot to vote for Donald Trump. According to an affidavit filed in the Colorado court, Chaffee County Clerk Lori Mitchell reported on October 22nd that the office had received a ballot that was pre-designated for a missing person identified as Suzanne Morphew. On August 10th, 2021, a hearing reveals Suzanne Morphew tried to leave her husband 2 days before she disappeared. Court proceedings revealed allegations of an affair and that Morphew had tried leaving her husband 2 days before she went missing. A text sent on May 8th, 2020 stated, "I'm done. I could care what you've been up to for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." Barry responded back with, "I promise you are wrong with all these crazy thoughts."
Disagreements between your mom and your dad that concerned you before?
No.
Prosecutors offering texts which appear to show a strained marriage. Suzanne referring to Barry as Jekyll and Hyde. And just before she disappeared, telling Barry, "I'm done." Suzanne confiding in a friend, "Macy and I had a very tough talk yesterday. She's weary of the tension here. She knows how he is toward me and almost begged me to divorce him. He's still pulling Mal in." But Barry and his daughters deny the marriage was in trouble.
We had a wonderful life.
November 9th, 2021, a judge was removed from the case. The judge overseeing the case against Barry Morphew was disqualified from the case because of a possible conflict of interest involving the counsel of a potential witness. On May 9th, 2021, Barry Morphew's defense attorney alleged that the prosecution hid evidence from the defense, specifically conversations prosecution had with law enforcement about the case. On February 9th, 2020, Barry Morphew's defense attorneys filed a motion of dismissal. The motion states, "It is abundantly clear that had the prosecution not immediately withheld massive amounts of exculpatory evidence prior to the preliminary hearing, probable cause would not have been found. The only just remedy is dismissal of the case. March 30th, 2022, several expert witnesses no longer able to testify against him. Following a motion hearing in Fremont County, 12 of the 14 possible expert witnesses against him were no longer allowed to testify. April 19th of 2022, District Attorney for the 11th Judicial District, Linda Stanley, filed a motion to dismiss the pending charges against Barry Morphew without prejudice, meaning he could be recharged. May 2nd of 2023, Barry Morphew files a $15 million civil suit against prosecutors, Chaffee County, and law enforcement. According to the lawsuit, Morphew is seeking $15 million for the damages caused by the defendant's prosecutors, Chaffee County, and law enforcement officials. In an exclusive interview that Morphew and his daughters gave to ABC News, Morphew insisted that he was wrongfully charged in her death. Of Susan says that the $15 million lawsuit filed by the missing Colorado woman's husband, Barry Morphew, against Colorado prosecutors is bogus. Bogus. September 22nd, 2023. Remains of Morphew were found. While searching for another missing woman, investigators stumbled upon remains in the area of Moffett. And then September 27th, 2023, remains positively identified. The El Paso County coroners positively identified the remains of those of Suzanne Morphew.
After Suzanne went missing, I had this overwhelming feeling, Nancy, that I needed to come out here and search for her. I actually saw Barry come around the corner, and he rolled down the window on the passenger side, and his mom was in the passenger seat. Yeah, Barry's mom. And I said, "Are you Barry Morphew?" And the look in his eyes, I knew immediately that he had done something. Instead of what we think happened, he said, "Let me show you what happened," which I thought was an interesting statement.
So let me show you what happened. And I do have a reward. The bike was found at the bottom of the hill by that tree where the peak is.
Oh, really? There's only been 2 times in my life that the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and the day I talked to Barry and he left was one of those days.
Let's get into this Barry Morphew charging document. Okay? Count 1, murder in the first degree, after deliberation F1. On or about May 9th to May 10th, 2020. In or triable in the state of Colorado, Barry Morphew unlawfully, feloniously, after deliberation, and with the intent to cause the death of a person other than himself, caused the death of Suzanne Morphew in violation of Section 18.3, 102, 1A. This is the probable cause for count 1. At 5:46 p.m. on May 10th, 2020, Mother's Day, Suzanne Morphew was reported missing to police by her neighbor. The last known person to see her alive was her husband, Barry Morphew. Investigators responded to the Morphew residence at 19057 Puma Path near Salida, Colorado, to investigate the missing person report. The house was locked. Suzanne Morphew was not home. Her vehicle was in the garage. Her redacted vehicle was in the garage. There was no signs of forced entry, and her bike was missing. Later that evening, her bike was located down a hillside off a dirt road between her house and Highway 50. The bike was located less than a mile from the Morphew home. On May 14, 2020, her bike helmet was located 10 meters off the side of the Highway 50, approximately 1.52 miles west of the Morphew home and approximately 0.84 miles west of where her bike was located. Barry Morphew was interviewed and told police that he set his alarm and woke up at 4:30 a.m. on May 10, 2020. He told police that he left at 5 a.m. on May 10, 2020 for a pre-planned work trip in Broomfield, Colorado. According to Barry Morphew, Suzanne Morphew was still asleep in bed when he left the house at 5 a.m. on May 10, 2020. He told police she planned to ride her bike that day. Barry Morphew stated that upon arrival in Broomfield that morning, he checked into a hotel before leaving shortly after for the job site. He told police that he received a call around 5 p.m. on May 10, 2020 from his neighbors while physically at the Broomfield job site. The neighbors told Barry Morphew that his daughters were concerned because they could not reach Suzanne all day. Barry instructed the neighbors to check the house and specifically to look for her bike. The neighbors reported to Barry that neither Suzanne nor the bike were at the house. And Barry then instructed them to call the sheriff. Police interviewed one of Barry's employees scheduled to assist him with the Broomfield job. The employee told law enforcement that the employee and Barry were not planning to leave Fort Broomfield until the evening hours of May 10th, 2020. They were supposed to drive together. Instead, Barry left without telling the employee. Barry called the employee at approximately 11:18 a.m. and informed that employee that he had left without them. While the employee arrived in Broomfield on Sunday evening, the employee noticed that Barry Morphew had failed to bring the proper tools with him for the job, and the necessary material for the job had not yet arrived at the job site. Review of the cameras at the hotel and nearby businesses revealed that Barry Morphew was in the Broomfield area for approximately 9 hours and 45 minutes. Of those hours, he spent less than 1/2 hour at the job site. Instead, besides 2 brief visits to the job area, electronic evidence and camera from the businesses showed him driving around to various locations and discarding unknown items in separate trash cans. Hotel footage then showed Barry Morphew arriving back at his hotel and remaining inside the room from approximately 12:34 p.m. to 5:55 p.m. Inconsistent with this statement to police, he was in the hotel and not at the job site when he received the call about his wife, Suzanne Morphew, being unresponsive and missing. In early interviews with Barry Morphew, he told law enforcement that his marriage to Suzanne Morphew was the best and that the two had a wonderful weekend together. When Barry was asked whether Suzanne would say anything different about their relationship, Barry stated no. Barry Morphew's statements about his marriage to Suzanne were inconsistent with other witnesses' accounts and evidence located. Specifically, investigators learned that Suzanne confided in people that she was unhappy in the marriage in the weeks and months leading up to her disappearance. She discussed plans to divorce Barry Morphew with her close friends. She maintained documented notes of problems in the relationship recovered from electronic devices and the physical search of the Morphew home. Suzanne Morphew had been having a secret affair with an old acquaintance who lived out of state. She communicated with him daily over LinkedIn and WhatsApp. Suzanne's last known electronic message to anyone was to this person on May 9th, 2020 at 2:11 p.m., just 32 minutes before Barry Morphew returned to the home that day. An overall timeline of the week of Suzanne Morphew's disappearance shows that the disappearance coincided with their daughter, Blank, the only other occupant of the Morphew residence, leaving on a pre-planned road trip out of state. Because of this, Suzanne Morphew and Barry Morphew expected to be alone at the residence starting on May 5th, 2020 until either late in the day on May 10th or into May 11th, 2020. Suzanne Morphew drove redacted to Gunnison, Colorado on May 5th, 2020 to depart with her sister and friend on the planned road trip. After May 5th, 2020, Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew were alone at the house. A forensic download of Barry Morphew's cell phone revealed that Barry Morphew had deleted a text chain with Suzanne Morphew, from which an image of a single text remained. A screenshot of this single text message was saved on Barry Morphew's phone on May 6, 2020. The image revealed a text from Suzanne that stated, "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." On May 11, 2020, authorities commenced a search of the Morphew residence that spanned several days. The state of the residence and vehicles showed no sign of a break-in or intruder. Even with signs of a break in or intruder, law enforcement collected items of potential evidence in DNA swabs. DNA analysis of the swabs collected produced several DNA profile mixtures consistent with what would be expected in the common areas of a home or a vehicle. The mixture profiles were processed through offender databases and were compared to the profiles of known individuals who may have been present in the vehicles or the residents. The results did not lead to any stranger or intruder suspect. An expert in DNA analysis testified that law enforcement provided analysis with one of the partial profiles developed from the glove box of Suzanne Morphew's vehicle for further investigation using a keyboard search. This allowed for additional comparison to profiles in more databases with less stringent quality controlled standards than the National DNA Index system for the limited purposes of creating possible investigative leads. That expert further testified that there were matches to outside databases nationwide. The term match used by DNA analysis does not mean identical. Rather, a match only means that there were other profiles that could not be excluded at the limited numbers of loci available from the partial profile for comparison. The expert explained that she then compared the matches from those databases to the partial profile from the mixture on the glove box and excluded those out of state profiles as not originating from the same contributor in all but 3 instances. Finally, the expert explained that just because the profile from those databases match at the limited loci available for comparison, it did not mean that any of the people from the out of state profiles were the same person that contributed to the partial profile to the mixture on the glove box. Law enforcement investigated those 3 partial matches obtained from 3 separate out of state sources and found no connection to the case. Law enforcement located a locked gun safe in the garage during the search of the Morphew residence. Inside the gun safe, law enforcement located a dart rifle or a tranquilizer rifle positioned towards the front of the safe. Law enforcement also found packages of Panut Dart brand tranquilizers dart in the gun safe. The packages of the dart included hypodermic needles inside of them, which were designed to load the darts. Law enforcement found one of these needle caps in the dryer after the dryer's contents were removed. Law enforcement also found men's shorts among the contents of the dryer that were removed prior to finding the needle cap. The shorts appeared consistent with the shorts of Barry Morphew. With the shorts Barry Morphew was seen on video wearing on May 9th, 2020, less than an hour before he returned to the Morphew residence. No tranquilizer formula was located during the law enforcement searches of the home and vehicles. Police investigated numerous electronic devices and Suzanne Morphew's social media accounts, searching, among other things, for proof of life. That investigation revealed that Suzanne Morphew had not communicated electronically with any living person after 2:11 p.m. on May 9, 2020. Her last possible activity on any account protected by password access was 3:08 p.m., over 24 hours prior to her being reported missing. Records showing her typical use of electronic and social media demonstrated that this was inconsistent with her typical pattern of life in the days leading up to her disappearance. Additionally, witnesses indicated that they attempted to communicate with Suzanne Morphew throughout this time frame but received no response from her. These witnesses indicated that her lack of response was out of the ordinary. Barry Morphew's electronic devices were also analyzed. A download of the infotainment system on Barry Morphew's truck recovered the telematic data showing the location and activity of his truck at certain times on May 9th and 10th, 2020. A download of Barry Morphew's cell phone showed additional location information. Based on data from his cell phones, Barry Morphew returned to the Morphew residence at 2:43 p.m. on May 9, 2020. The data did not show his phone or truck leaving the residence again until the morning of May 10, 2020. The download of Barry Morphew's cell phones registered events related to his phones. An expert forensic analysis determined that some of these events were in fact Barry Morphew's phone being turned off during the time frame of May 9th into May 10, 2020. Turning off a cellular device effectively disables its ability to record location information. Specifically, the forensic analysis noted that Barry Morphew's phones download showed it was turned off at 2:47 p.m. on May 9, 2020, only a few minutes after he arrived home at the residence where Suzanne Morphew sent her last electronic communication to anyone. At approximately 10:17 p.m. on May 9, 2020, the phone was turned back on. Barry Morphew's cell phone was again turned off at 4:32 a.m. On May 10, 2020, prior to him leaving the residence on his trip to Broomfield, Colorado, and there was no turn on again until 5:37 a.m. when location information showed him on the road already in the area of Johnson Village, Colorado. Testimony established that the times Barry Morphew turned off his phone corresponded to periods of time of significance in the case where location information was consequently unavailable. Similarly, further analysis of the information from Barry Morphew's infotainment system, the telematics, in his truck showed irregular gaps in recorded activities. Specifically, from approximately 3:49 a.m. to approximately 8:10 a.m. on May 10, 2020. There is no recorded data registering on Barry's infotainment system. An indication of no truck activity from telematics is inconsistent with other facts developed from Barry Morphew's phone surveillance footage and Barry Morphew's statements about his activities on May 10, 2020. Specifically, telematics showed Barry Morphew arrived at his residence at 2:43 a.m. And on May 9th, 2020, it then registered various other locations throughout the afternoon at the residence until it ceased at 9:52 p.m. on May 9th, 2020. The telematics data then showed activities resumed from 3:25 a.m. to 3:49 a.m. on May 10, 2020 at a GPS location consistent with his driveway. Barry Morphew reported to law enforcement that he was asleep during that time frame. From 3:49 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. on May 10th, 2020, the infotainment system on or telematics did not register any data despite the fact that Barry Morphew's cell phone indicated the device was in Johnson's Village at 5:37 a.m. on that date, and Barry reported being in his truck traveling to Broomfield at that time. When recorded telematics data became available again in the records from the infotainment system downloaded at 8:10 a.m. on May 10, 2020, corresponding GPS coordinates showed that Barry Morphew had already arrived in the area of Broomfield, Colorado. This gap in registered data is inconsistent with the pattern of telematics data captured in the days and weeks leading up to this event. Phone records for both Suzanne Morphew and Barry Morphew were analyzed by expert investigators. The FBI CAS team analyzed phone records for both Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew to determine location information and device usage related to their cell phones. In Suzanne Morphew's phone records, there was no indication of any user imitated activity after the time Barry Morphew returned home at 2:43 p.m. on May 9, 2020. Suzanne Morphew's cell phone device continued to connect through RTT data with the cell tower that services the Morphew home throughout the night of May 9th into the clear morning of May 10th, 2020. These automated data connections, however, were consistent with the tower reaching out to the phone to determine its location and not initiated by the user of the device. After 4:23 a.m. on May 9, 2020, Suzanne's phone ceased to connect at all, ever again. Just 8 minutes later, Barry Morphew's cell phone data showed his phone ceased to connect starting at 4:31 a.m., consistent with the cell phone downloads, showing it powering off at 4:32 a.m. Suzanne Morphew's cell phone never registered on any towers other than the towers consistent with the Morphew residence from the time Barry Morphew returned home around 2:43 p.m. and on May 9, 2020, to the time it ceased activity altogether at 4:23 a.m. on May 10, 2020. Despite searches for the device, Suzanne Morphew's cell phone was never found. Police interviewed people that knew Barry Morphew prior to his move from Indiana to Colorado in 2018. These witnesses told law enforcement that Barry Morphew was a deer farmer in Indiana. Several individuals told law enforcement that Barry Morphew used a specific tranquilizer called BAM to sedate and transport deer on his deer farm. Barry Morphew admitted to using BAM in both Indiana and Colorado, specifically admitted to using BAM in Colorado as recently as of April of 2020, stating that at that time he had tranquilized a deer from the breezeway of the Morphew residence. On September 20th, 2023, human remains were found in or around a shallow clandestine grave in Saguache County, Colorado, near Highway 17. The remains were found a few hundred feet down a dirt road off Highway 17. This location was less than an hour south of the Morphew residence by main highways. The remains were determined to be those of Suzanne Morphew. The majority of her bones were recovered. Many of the bones were significantly bleached. Along with Suzanne's bones, law enforcement recovered a cancer port and items of clothing, some of which were consistent with bike clothing Suzanne was known to wear. There was no visible perimortem trauma observed. A board certified forensic anthropologist, a botanist, and an entomologist all analyzed the remains, and several observations were noted. There was a distinct lack of bug activity, which was inconsistent with the remains having decomposed at that location. The clothing items lacked evidence of decomposition, which was inconsistent with Suzanne Morphew's wearing the bike clothes at the time her body decomposed. Additionally, there was a lack of animal predation on the bones. There were only a very small amounts of desiccated soft tissue found on a few of the bones, and there was no hair mass located. All of these features would have been expected if this had been the original gravesite where the decomposition occurred. The forensic anthropologist opined that based on these factors, it was unlikely Suzanne decomposed from a flesh body to its skeleton at this location. The El Paso County Coroner's Office conducted an autopsy. In addition to the standard toxicology testing, the Coroner's Office conducted additional toxicology testing at the request of law enforcement for the presence of a chemical mixture known as BAM, or the combination of butorphanol, azaprone, metamomiting. The chief of toxicology tests tested Suzanne Morphew's bone marrow for the presence of BAM. All three of the individual chemicals that comprise BAM were present. Additionally, the metabolite for butorphanol was present. The presence of the butorphanol metabolite eliminated the possibility of postmortem BAM contamination. The metabolite's presence also indicated that her death was not immediate following BAM exposure because Suzanne Morphew's body had begun to metabolize the drug before she died. The coroner's office determined cause of death and matter of death as followed: homicide by unspecific means in the setting of butorphanol, azaprone, and metamidine intoxication. Hope I'm saying all those correctly. A pharmacologist and medical doctor testified about the toxicology test done to determine the presence of BAM in Suzanne Morphew's remains, about the chemical compound itself, and about the possible effects of that compound in humans. The expert explained that the toxicology testing done by the coroner's office met scientific standards of reliability and accuracy. He further testified that BAM is a chemical mixture of 3 specific compounds used as a tool for sedating animals for medical treatment or movement. Back in 2020 and the years leading up to Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, BAM was sold only by only one company in the United States and could only be obtained by prescription from a veterinarian. BAM must be administered into the bloodstream through intravenous or intramuscular injection to be effective, as the skin and GI tract do not absorb it effectively. BAM does not cause sedation instantaneously, but takes several minutes to take effect. BAM is designed not to be lethal and comes with reversal agents in the prescription kit. However, BAM is not FDA approved for any human use. For that reason, there's no scientific studies available that address the possible effects of the compound would have on humans. The pharmacological expert testified that the compound would render the recipient wholly immobile, vulnerable, and unable to resist any constrictions to the recipient's ability to breathe. Records were obtained for BAM prescriptions related to Barry Morphew. Records were also obtained for BAM prescriptions for all persons within the counties and adjacent counties to where the Morphews lived and where Suzanne Morphew's remains were found. Those records show that Barry Morphew obtained and filled several prescriptions for BAM while living in Indiana. Barry Morphew last purchase of BAM by prescription was in March of 2018. Barry obtained multiple kits that each contained multiple doses just a few months before the Morphews moved to Colorado. Records show that no other private citizen or private businesses in any of the surrounding counties had purchased BAM prescription from 2017 to 2020. Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the National Park Services were the only entities that registered prescriptions of BAM in those counties from 2017 to 2020 through 2020. Investigators learned that each of the government entities enforce tight regulations to monitor the BAM prescription storage use. None of the BAM from these agencies were unaccounted for. Ultimately, the prescription shows that when Suzanne Morphew disappeared, only one private citizen living in the entire area of the state had access to BAM, Barry Morphew. All offenses against the peace and dignity of the people of Colorado.
Good evening, sir. Can I get your name and date of birth?
Barry Morphew, 10/17/67.
Thank you, sir. And it does look like you are here today on a warrant from the state of Colorado, and they have indicated that they want to extradite you back to the state of Colorado. Did you get an opportunity to review that laminated card that was given to you today?
Yes.
Okay. So you have a choice to make here today. You have two options, and we're going to go over what your options are. So first, let's discuss what you're here for. There is, again, a warrant from the state of Colorado. They've indicated they do want to extradite you back to the state of Colorado related to an offense charge of homicide.
Shout out to East Idaho News for that clip that I just used. Make sure you check out their channel. So Barry Morphew had court on Tuesday. And there was an update in that court. I mean, he goes in that courtroom, he's smiling, not giving a care in the world about the fact that he's yet again facing murder charges. Okay. Barry Morphew appeared in a Colorado courtroom Tuesday for the first time since he was arrested a second time on suspicion of murdering his wife, Suzanne. Suzanne Morphew was reported missing in Chaffee County on Mother's Day in 2020. Her skeletal remains were found off a dirt road in 2023. Morphew made his first appearance in Alamosa County Court in handcuffs in an orange and white jail jumpsuit. One of his daughters blew him a kiss when he walked into the courtroom, and the man accused of killing their mother gave her a big smile. Let me just say that Don't know if the daughters are like even in Suzanne Morphew's last text messages, it seemed like he had those daughters really well brainwashed. I mean, we've seen them do sit down interviews about their mother. It's a really sad situation. So here you are, your father is facing murder for the second time, these charges, and they're blowing each other kisses. I wonder deep down inside what they're thinking. Um, but this must be difficult for them as well, if you know what I mean. It was a brave look for a man who had been pulled back into the justice system for Suzanne's murder. He was arrested on June 20th in Arizona and extradited to Colorado this week. Tuesday consisted of mostly standard courtroom proceedings. Morphew waived his right to be advised of his legal rights and was not asked to speak. The 12th District Attorney, Kellyanne, will prosecute the case. The earlier case against Barry Morphew was thrown out, was prosecuted by the disgraced and disbarred former 11th Judicial District DA Linda Stanley, which like I said, I believe she lost her law license. The initial case against him was dropped in 2022 because of prosecutorial issues with evidence. It was said Linda Stanley was talking to some YouTubers here that also played a role in her misconduct as a prosecutor. The prosecutors can't be talking to us YouTubers. I don't understand why people wouldn't get that, but that did happen. It is our understanding that we will be appointed on to continue our representation of Mr. Morphew, Beller said in the courtroom. The defense is already looking into to put an end to this case. They submitted a challenge to the probable cause in the case. The prosecution said it was ready for the move, and they expect this case to move past it. His bond is $3 million with the possibility that it could change before the next scheduled court date in early September. In the months between now and then, the evidence the prosecution has assembled will be reviewed. Listen, if they're coming back again a second time and charging you, even though they had a little fumbleation over there with Linda Stanley, I'm wondering what they're going to bring this time. And don't forget, Barry Morphew tried to sue Chaffee County for this case. He thought he was done and out, but Colorado said, no, you're still a prime suspect. You're still the suspect, and we're still charging you. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this whole situation. We're going to be following it to the T, guys, to the T. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Hit the like button. Bye now.